The little boy stood frozen beside the flower display, clutching a worn-out toy truck with both hands. His wide eyes never left the man behind the hardware store counter. Then his mother took a shaky breath, swallowed her pride, and whispered the words that would change 3 lives forever. "Can you be the father of my baby for one day?" she asked. Time seemed to stop. The noise of customers faded into silence. Every painful memory either of them had buried suddenly felt close enough to touch. And before saying yes, the man looked into her tear-filled eyes and quietly replied, "Only if you tell me why." Before we continue, if you believe kindness still has the power to change lives, and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel for more heartfelt stories that remind us humanity is still alive. The story began in the quiet town of Franklin, Tennessee, where life moved slowly enough for strangers to greet each other on the sidewalks. Nathan Carter owned a small family hardware store that had belonged to his late father. Every morning he unlocked the doors before sunrise, swept the wooden floors, watered the flowers outside, and greeted every customer with the same warm smile. Most people knew Nathan as the dependable man who never complained, but very few knew how lonely his evenings had become after losing his wife, Rebecca, to a sudden illness 3 years earlier. They had dreamed of raising children together, but fate had stolen that dream before it could begin. Since then, Nathan buried himself in work, convincing himself that helping others was enough to fill the empty spaces in his heart. That ordinary Tuesday afternoon changed everything when Hannah Brooks walked through the front door with her 6-year-old son, Caleb. She looked exhausted, as though sleep had become a distant memory. Her clothes were clean but worn, and there was a quiet dignity about the way she carried herself, despite the sadness behind her eyes. Caleb wandered toward the display of flower seeds, while Hannah stood silently near the paint samples, clearly trying to gather the courage to say something impossible. Nathan noticed immediately that something was wrong. Years of listening to customers had taught him that sometimes people entered his store looking for far more than nails or paint. Sometimes they came searching for hope. He approached gently and asked if she needed help. Hannah looked down for a long moment before lifting her eyes, and tears immediately began rolling down her cheeks. She apologized repeatedly, before finally asking the question that stunned him. She explained that her newborn daughter, Grace, had been born only weeks earlier after her husband, Michael, was killed in a devastating highway accident while driving home from work. Michael had never lived long enough to meet his daughter. The tragedy had left Hannah alone with 2 young children, overwhelming medical bills, and endless paperwork. That morning, she had received a call from the local Veterans Memorial Ceremony, where Michael was to receive a posthumous community honor. The organizers had prepared a symbolic family presentation, expecting both parents to stand together with the children during the dedication. Hannah had tried explaining that Michael had passed away, but because of the event's special format and a misunderstanding in the paperwork, they encouraged her to bring someone willing to stand beside her, so Caleb would not have to relive the trauma of watching everyone else's complete families while standing alone. Caleb had quietly asked if someone could pretend to be his daddy, just for that ceremony so his baby sister could someday see a family picture. Nathan felt his throat tighten. He looked toward Caleb, who was pretending to admire flower pots while secretly listening to every word. The little boy's hopeful eyes revealed more pain than any child should ever carry. Nathan knew this wasn't about pretending. It was about protecting a child's fragile heart during one unforgettable day. He agreed without hesitation. The following Saturday, Nathan borrowed a simple navy suit and met Hannah and the children outside the community church, where the ceremony would begin. Caleb ran toward him, with the innocent excitement only children possess. He slipped his tiny hand into Nathan's, and smiled for what Hannah admitted was the first genuine smile she had seen since Michael's funeral. Throughout the ceremony, Nathan never tried to replace anyone. He simply stood beside the family with quiet respect. When Grace became restless, he gently rocked her in his arms. When Caleb grew nervous walking onto the stage, Nathan knelt beside him and whispered encouragement. During the group photograph, Hannah glanced sideways and realized she was seeing something she thought had disappeared forever. A moment of peace. The picture captured more than smiling faces. It captured healing beginning in silence. After the ceremony ended, Nathan expected their paths to separate forever. Instead, Caleb hugged him tightly before climbing into the car. As they drove away, Nathan returned to his empty store feeling a loneliness even greater than before. For just one afternoon, he had remembered what hope felt like. Weeks passed. One rainy afternoon, Hannah returned to the hardware store carrying homemade apple pie. She explained that Caleb refused to stop talking about Mr. Nathan, the kind man who had made one painful day easier to survive. She simply wanted to say, "Thank you." Their conversation lasted nearly an hour. They spoke about loss, grief, fear, and the strange way broken people often recognize one another without saying much at all. Those visits became regular. Sometimes Hannah stopped by for gardening supplies she barely needed. Sometimes Nathan offered to help repair a broken fence or replace a leaking faucet at her house. Caleb insisted Nathan attend his baseball games, and little Grace eventually learned to laugh whenever Nathan walked through the front door, carrying fresh flowers from outside the store. The town noticed the quiet friendship growing between them, but neither Nathan nor Hannah rushed to define it. They both understood that love built from healing is different from love built from excitement. It grows patiently, one act of kindness at a time. Nearly a year later, on another bright Saturday morning, Nathan invited Hannah and the children to the same park where the veterans' ceremony had taken place. This time, there were no crowds, no speeches, and no painful memories waiting to be faced. Only sunshine, blooming trees, and laughter filling the air. Nathan knelt before Caleb first, asking if it would be all right if he officially became part of their family. Caleb burst into tears before throwing his arms around him. Hannah cried even harder. Then, Nathan turned toward her, holding a simple engagement ring that had belonged to his grandmother. She didn't answer with words, she simply nodded through tears. The photograph taken that afternoon looked remarkably similar to the one from the ceremony a year earlier, except this time, no one was pretending. Grace reached for Nathan naturally. Caleb leaned proudly against his shoulder. Hannah smiled without forcing herself. The family standing together was no longer held together by temporary kindness, but by genuine love that had quietly grown from compassion. Sometimes life introduces us to people through unimaginable heartbreak, not because the pain was meant to define us, but because healing often begins when one ordinary person chooses compassion. Instead of walking away, Nathan never replaced Michael, and no one ever expected him to. Instead, he honored the memory of a good man by helping protect the family he left behind. In doing so, he discovered that broken hearts can become homes for hope once again. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in love after loss, and subscribe for more inspiring stories that remind us kindness can change destinies. Special request, please leave a comment below with the words, "Kindness changes lives," if you believe even one act of compassion can create a miracle. Because sometimes, the greatest families are not the ones we are born into, but the ones that are built through courage, sacrifice, and the simple decision to stand beside someone when they need it most. And on that unforgettable day, when one grieving mother asked a heartbreaking question, a lonely man discovered that saying yes would not only change her children's future, it would quietly save his own heart as well.